Hey, guys, this is Bernard Johnson, Richmond, Virginia. Got a special guest today named T. West. Let me go ahead and bring him in the room. Hey, how
Hey,
you doing
brother.
today, brother?
Good, Bernard.
Doing all
How
right?
you doing?
I'm doing
Good.
wonderful, my brother. Just wanted to announce this is T. West, Afro News. Great brother. He's announced me in his program 3 times, and I said I gotta reciprocate the favor today. So you know, I guess you go and shout out your contact information, brother. A lot of people need to watch your channel. You're a brilliant man, and people can learn a lot from you.
Well, thank you, Bernard. Once again, thanks for the invite to your program, and looking forward to the subject matter here today. So, how are things coming there in Richmond, Virginia?
Um, Tearing down statues. Last night an officer tried to run over a protester. Actually, to be honest with you, with the protest, I mean, I guess they're okay, but we'll talk about it during the program. But it's too convoluted to talk about Black Lives Matter and manifesto. You know what they're really about and who they're financed by. So it's kind of like I support the idea, but Black Lives Matter, but as far as the organization, and I will say this about them, they get things done, but when you really look at the manifesto and find out what they're really about, it is something that we want to be involved in when it comes to anything dealing with George Soros and these type of hypocrites that are actually funding these ancillary movements, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, so long as most of the focus is not on that, and on that I mean, most of the focus is not on the fact that George Soros is funding it. That's good information to know, but we have to realize that when you're talking about full and complete liberation, that there are always going to be and always have been other fringe groups who have been engaged with that, who are really not really fighting for your complete liberation, but their hand in the equation actually helps. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to realize that. So I will never put a lot of focus on the fact that Black Lives Matter is getting money from George Soros. I never will, because that's not where the main focus should be. The main focus must be on the goal. The goal is complete liberation, and in order to attain complete liberation, African Americans, Black folks in this country, have to have reparations. You have to
Yeah.
be paid for that debt that's been owed for a long time by the U.S. government.
Let's bring that up. Actually, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and hop off with that. Now we were talking about that the other day, and some people like Umar Johnson, don't like him, but Umar Johnson made one point on Instagram, and I'll shout him out for this. He made a point. When you allow your march to be convoluted, you also get a politician like Joe Biden that says, "Well, I support reparations, but give it to Native Americans." But he's not telling you the fact that a lot of these Native Americans would be called $5 Indians or people of color, etc. So when you talk about reparations, it has to be like Indians get Native Americans, they give them $3.8 billion a year. Then you got the Jews, they get theirs. Latinos, I mean, I say reparations, they get economic incentives. So when you have your reparations incentive, you have to say, no, this is strictly for me. No if and buts about it. When I looked at Robert Johnson's program, it was $14 trillion we could suffice, but the actual number was 17 trillion. I'm not going to get too much into all that, but it's when he came and said that if you let other groups get in, you're going to still be at the bottom in this stick. You have to say, at the end of the day, this is for me. And that's why I appreciated those brothers and sisters who had the guts, unlike the Black Caucus and all these other Black folks, even your entertainers, singers, rappers, etc., that will not have the guts to stand with Donald Trump and go meet at the table. And that's Sonny Johnson. You got to give that woman a lot of credit because she broke the house down. She won't happen to be in the room. She actually said the facts.
Yeah. Sonny spoke well. She spoke well at that round table there at the White House a few days ago. Now, when well, you mentioned Joe Biden. Joe Biden, when questioned during the Democrat debate months ago about reparations, Joe Biden went right off into illegal immigration about helping them. So Joe Biden, he really don't have any credibility when the question of reparations is asked. So Joe, I don't have much to say about Joe. Now, with the Native Americans, you mentioned the Native Americans. Joe talking about the Native Americans. Well, that's just a deflection. That's just a distraction. We're not going to have a conversation about the Native Americans. We're not going to denigrate the Native Americans. Okay, we're not going to do that. The conversation, if someone mentions Native Americans, hey, look, I don't have anything to say. You move on. You move on to your goal, and your goal is reparations for African Americans. The Native Americans, they have fought their battle. They still fight their battles. They know how to fight their battles. They've gotten some things. They've gotten some land. They've gotten some money. They've gotten free health care. Now, that does not mean that solves everything relative to Native Americans. But this is not a time for any conversation about Native Americans and $5 Indians or whatever. It's not a time for that. This is a time for us to focus on us. What's happening. The George Floyds, the Philando Castiles, the Breonna Taylors, the Trayvon Martins, Tamir Rice, and on and on and on down the line. All these, all those who have been killed by police, but not only killed by police, okay, because the police can never, ever kill more blacks than biological weapons are being used.
That's right.
Blacks, not only in America, but around the world. So when people start talking about numbers and statistics, I'm like, well, do you want to deal with the whole slate of statistics? Because, I'm going to bring it all to the table, not just what the FBI reports on what the police are doing or not doing, but I'm going to bring to the table what I know to be the facts of Black death, Black genocide here in the United States and around the world. All of it.
Yes, let me say something about that. I'm glad you brought that up, T. West, because it's some fact of when people talk about we need police reform, I got a better thing for you. How about you give us the reparations, what we need, and then I know you probably read a final call paper, etc. Get a certain state, divide us up in 8 states, and we can build our own land farming, and we can have our business. We redid Black Wall Street once. We can do it again. Separate territory, separate land, and we got to have it. But give a reparation. We can form our own police department or police our own neighborhoods. We don't actually need other outside ethnic groups to police us. We could do that ourselves. So when they talk about police reform, I wish that the people would say in the legislative branch would say, no, I need reparations. Police reform sound good, but that's not economic money. You need to pay this debt you owe. Reparations mean repaying for the labor you stole, the wealth you stole, and everything. If you look at that, and you put it up a lot of times, that black wealth chart, that wealth chart is getting down, down, down. You had it under Obama, it shot down like a cliff after that subprime mortgage crisis. Then it flatlined, but at the end of the day, COVID is going to bring it down some more. So the only way you can repair this is reparations. That's what you owe. That is not, like a handout. That's what you owe.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned police reform, and you mentioned land. You mentioned those two things. Well, okay. Well, we know that the police is not going to reform. We know that you're always going to have KKK like cops within the force in America. You're going to always have that. There's no amount of reform that's going to reform that. That is a malignant cancer that is commonplace in America. Now, you mentioned land. Now, years ago, I talked about and I did a program about the southeastern region of the United States. Okay. Now, but you mentioned give us this land. Well, I differ on that. I'm not saying give us this land. 49% of blacks reside in the southeastern region of the United States, around about 49%. So they're still in the South. Now, you can have a de facto state, a de facto region that is
Yes.
okay. Now, how is that? Well, when illegal immigrants come into the United States, they created such a large number in certain areas to the point where what they did through city councils, county and state government, they created what's called sanctuary areas. Okay? So essentially a sanctuary state, a sanctuary county, a sanctuary region that had laws and ordinances that benefited them, even laws that were in contrast to federal laws. Okay? Now, when black folk in California, Lancaster, California, there's lots of talk right now about Lancaster and Palmdale, California, where you have these hangings of blacks that are occurring there.
Yes.
California. This is not Mississippi, not Alabama, even though it's happening all across the country, but this is California. When you have situations where blacks are facing lynchings and killings and other forms of crimes and discrimination all across America, then and you're low, small in number and demographics in these areas, then the only reasonable thing to do with a final solution would be to go to an area where you have numbers, to go to an area where you can, with your numbers, you can bring about economic growth, political growth. And that area is the southeastern region. Now, when you go into that area and then you establish a majority, not a near majority, but a majority, then you will see certain things begin to fall down. You will see gerrymandering begin to fall. You will see white folks who don't like you. You will see them moving out. They will leave Alabama. They will leave Mississippi. They will leave Georgia. When black folks start getting a majority in those areas with an effective agenda. Okay? Now, you can get a majority and not have an effective agenda. And you get the same results that you've been getting. You can have a majority in Detroit, a majority in Atlanta, but you could still have the same doggone effect that you've been having for generations after generation. So when you have a majority and you attain a majority with an effective agenda, that's why I did the African American National Political Agenda, the 21-point agenda, because you need that agenda that defines who you are, what you want, what you stand for. Okay? Now, once you have that, you have a de facto, a de facto nation state in a region within the United States. You're not asking that they give you that. You are attaining that yourselves by moving, leaving California, leaving other areas where your grandparents and your great-grandparents left and migrated to, looking for a better life. Okay?
Okay.
They found a better life. They found a better life, but their children and their children's children are discovering, well, hey, the Klan came out here too. They're right here. They're in California. They're in the state of Oregon. They're in the state of Washington. They're out west also. They're in Boston. Okay, so once we do that, what I articulated years ago was a de facto nation state.
Okay. Well, let me say something about like I agree with something you're saying. Like okay, like California now 6% black. Utah's like 1 or 2. In other states where you have low, you really I agree with you in saying you need to come back to where you at because really to tell you the truth, you know the old saying, you know people used to like the Golden State Warriors thing called strength in numbers. Well, you don't have numbers in the area, so really to tell you the truth, the political arena, justice arena will not benefit you if you're not the majority in that area or have anything to offer to that table in those areas. How you feel about that?
Well, you got to have not only a majority, as I said, you've
Yeah,
got to have an effective agenda. Majority
yeah,
alone is not the answer. You've
yeah.
got to have, and I'm emphasizing this, you have got to have an effective black agenda.
That's right.
Get the majority and then have an effective black agenda.
I got a question for you on that. Now, that African Americans National 21-point agenda you got is man. I mean, I read it. I mean, it was spot on, man. I mean, spot on to the point. You didn't leave no blanks out. I mean, loved it. You and what's the woman? Shirley Huzar. I mean, you got some brilliant people speaking. I mean, we really would need you all to get to the legislative branch, but of course, you know the Black Caucus probably wouldn't let you get up there. You know, they're so entrenched into whatever their agenda is. It's not us. I mean, really to tell you the truth, I look at getting new young black leadership in office and getting them out. I think they need to be term limits on these guys. If you don't do what you put in to do, represent us, you know, you need to go. I mean, that's how we got we go on symbolism too much and not substance. Obama was the great example of symbol ever, or Barry Soetoro, as some people call him, as I do. He's the greatest example of symbolism, but in the end, he was just like an empty thing, no substance, like a cup of water. If you can give me a cup of water, but hey, if it's nothing in on the bottom of the glass, you still be thirsty. So that's how I look at the symbolism, like the Black Lives Matter thing across the streets of DC. I said put reparations on the streets of DC. Don't taint me with Black Lives Matter across the streets of DC. That's just symbolism. Even with these Confederate statues and all this other stuff, that's another little symbolism game. You know, make you feel, I guess, important. But at the end of the day, that's not putting no money or repairing the damage you've done. Like it's a, you know, like I'm gonna give you an example, and I wanted to bring this up to you. This wasn't really supposed to be in my topics, but I'm gonna bring it up. How you feel about the situation in Atlanta yesterday? You can repeat, you can say that after the fact, but the situation in Atlanta yesterday, same story, same rodeo again. So reparations now is what I say. Not Black Lives Matter in front of the White House. Reparations now should have been on the street. That's what I say.
Yeah. Reparations must be out in the forefront. Reparations must be out in the forefront. They've tried everything that they're talking about out there right now. They've tried all of that, and those are band-aids that are thrown at these problems. So a final solution is what we're looking for. That's what we're working towards. The Congressional Black Caucus you mentioned, they're less important to me than the viewers and the listeners, the grassroots, the people. They're less important to me than the people, because I know if I reach the people with this message, if they are convicted, if they are changed by the message that I'm bringing them, I know they will do the right thing relative to who their congressional representatives are. I know that some of them will say, well, I'm going to find out how I can run for Congress. I'm going to run against those who are not really promoting this black agenda. That's coming from the grassroots. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Those who are in there right now, most of them they're not really going to rock the boat. You see, full and complete liberation requires the rocking of the boat. Okay? All right? And somebody said, but don't turn the boat over. Well, sometimes you
You
might
gotta
have
turn it
to
over.
put over. Sometimes you might have to say, burn, baby, burn. Okay? Because power concedes nothing.
That's right.
Without a demand, okay, but that demand has to be serious. That demand has to be maintained and sustained. Otherwise, power reverts back to the status quo. So that's my message with that. We can fix the situation, but we have to do it at the grassroots level. And that's what
Well,
I do with the Afrosynergy News channel. I reach the people.
that's what you're supposed to do.
Approach the people. Okay? You teach the people. Okay? You show them the vision. Okay? You show them the direction. You show them where to go and how to do it.
That's right. Well, like I said, I mean, the grassroots. I mean, every revolution I know of, from the Haitian Revolution, or didn't matter. The revolution has always come from the grassroots. It's not going to come from those in Congress. It come from the people on the ground.
Well, sometimes you have revolutions that don't come from the ground. You have
Okay.
you have what's called color revolutions.
Yeah.
Okay? Those revolutions, that type of revolution does not come from the people. That
That's,
comes from up high, but it's made to look and appear like it's coming from the people. This COVID-19 is just
oh,
one example of it in America.
yeah.
But if we, and in other areas of the world also, but if we were to go with the so-called Arab Spring, that was a color revolution.
That was bad. That was funded by Soros and others to overthrow Gaddafi.
That's coming from the top. That's not coming from the people. It's made to appear as if it's coming from the people, but it's not coming from the people. So you got to know and understand the difference between a real revolution and a counterfeit
Yeah.
revolution.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. That Arab Spring, that was definitely funded by Soros and others, and they went and destroyed Gaddafi. Let me ask a question even about that. Speaking of that, what about the unifying branch of solution? The knowledge you put out is powerful, but some people, gonna be stuck in their ways. They're gonna still say, "Well, I like it this way, I like it that way." I mean, I put it this way, brother. You know, history always repeats itself. So, like the '60s, you had King and you had Malcolm. Me personally, I like the Malcolm X way better, even though King did change before he died. After King, they said, okay, we will let you get into spaces through affirmative action. But we got to understand something. Affirmative action not only is I would say it's an integrating process, but it's also a trick because when they wrote the law, they said minority, but they actually tricked us because minority means you could be anything. Minority doesn't specifically state black. It could be women, LGBT, Latino. It could be anything. So really, to tell you the truth, you get put in a convoluted category, and you're saying, why are the funds coming to me? But you, David, yourself as a minority. One thing I will say, and I give Donald Trump credit for this, when he talks to black people, he always says black people. He doesn't put you in a people of color class. I was even watching an interview the other day when he was talking about Seattle. You know what? The woman actually said person of color more than he did. He didn't say person of color one time. He said the black community. So I think also we have to look at ourselves and stop always putting ourselves in a people of color category too. Because if you look at yourself as a person of color, you're just basically throwing yourselves in another lion's den with a whole lot of things in there, and you get eaten up by everything.
Well, let me ask you a question, Bernard. Why do you think some black folks often use the term people of color?
I look at it as that's what we've been taught to say, or we feel that we are people of color. But I look at it as like this: we have not really got to the solution where we think that we can do this ourselves, and that's why we also bring other people in our groups and we say people of color. But when what I'm saying, I'm trying to get this thing right.
Now
If
you just got it right. You just answered it correctly. Uh,
okay,
Most blacks who say people of color, they're doing it because they feel somewhat powerless. So they feel
yeah,
that they need to have and they must have this coalition of other groups out here who are, quote, people of color. So they're feeling powerless, therefore they do that. But historically, what has happened is that their allies, and I should put that in quotes right there, who have helped them most often, once they break down the door, their allies, the other people of color, they get theirs, they get it, but the blacks are still left outside the door. Okay, they may let a few blacks may be let in. Okay, uh, Jesse Jackson, Rainbow Coalition, people of color, and that whole bit. Jesse was let in. Those within the close circle of Jesse Jackson, they were let in. But the majority of the blacks were still left out. How do we know they were left out? Look at the wealth gap. That's how you know.
well, something you said about that. It's like this. This quote unquote boule thing. It's like the town, the tip thing they got. It's like 10% or 15%, whatever, of the blacks control the wealth. But if you take the 85% on the bottom, I mean, the wealth gap is almost like it's almost like zero when you compare the rest of it. Because if you actually look at it, it's a statistic out right now. If we don't get some wealth real soon, our wealth will be zero in 2053. So, really, to tell you the truth, that goes to show you the white race talks about individualism, but not collectivism with us. That's what is more. You running on a capitalistic, individualistic society when you need to be focused on reprostrating the wealth and services back to your people. That's what every other ethnic group does. They're gonna try to make sure that even if I got people in elite and high places, the people on the bottom can still benefit. If we did that, we'd be a whole lot better than we are today.
Well, it is a myth, mostly, that America is about individualism and um, pulling yourselves up. That's mostly a myth. The government has built wealth in this country to a very, very large degree. The government has built white wealth, and that white wealth largely came out of the wealth that blacks, your ancestors, during and even after slavery produced in this country. So the government has built that up. So it was a collective. It wasn't a singular situation, pretty much. Of course, you had singular things. You had individuals who were doing things themselves, but white. But the government was right there. The government said, "Hey, Johnny, you go over there. If you put a stake down on that 25 acres of land over there, and you start farming that land, and you maintain that land will be yours. You don't have to buy it. It's yours. We'll deed it to you. We'll give it to you. So those were the benefits of what is called white privilege. And whites were getting that and maintaining that. And to a large degree, they're still getting it today here in the United States of America. They're still getting it. Some people may ask the question, well, I'm white, but I don't feel any white privilege. Well, generally, when you talk about that type of white person, they're either lazy, they either have a mental condition, or they got a drug problem. Those are situations with that type of white person, usually in America. But even with that, they still got privilege. They still got it. Because, if you were a dope head, if you were black and you were a dope head, crack addict, or a heroin addict, it was difficult, nearly impossible to get treatment. But now, because, these opiates and all, fentanyl and all is a huge problem with white people in America. Okay, these poor white people, rich white people, that privilege has awarded them in Congress. Congress says these are our people. They're sick. They're on drugs. So therefore, we're going to contribute billions of dollars towards treating this problem. So there's your white privilege right there. That benefits all of the lower class white people, all those who are out there on meth. And we know white people have had a meth problem, for a long time, a very, very long time. So white privilege is real. So when someone like low information pimping Candace Owens and some of the others of that ilk, when they come and say that there's no white privilege does not exist, well, that's a lie. And they know they're lying. They don't even believe that themselves, but they're getting paid to say that. Okay?
Yeah. Let me say something about that. Come to think about it, I'm just glad you brought her and Tatum and these other little clowns running around. You know, when it comes to some information they put out, it could be true. But when they start getting on the there's no white privilege and all that, that's when you got to extricate them. If they talking at a speech and they talking about the single motherhood rate, or you know urban blight and democratic policies, they'd be right on point. But then sooner or later, you got to check them at the door. However, I've been saying this about Kansas Owens for a long time. Kansas Owens in 2015 even admitted she was on liberal. Then somehow she jumped to the other side and became a Republican, or at least I think she was trying to be like the new Omarosa type, I guess. But really, to tell you the truth, if you realize when at that round table that you saw the other day, you didn't see no Kansas Owens in that room. I mean, the worst part you probably saw was Ben Costin and Daryl Scott. But otherwise, you saw some black people in that room that was strong and tough and actually made a list of demands. They told Trump, "We need to hear from you. You've done a lot." Now, I want to say something about this. This HBCU program he's got, and I want that he put the funding for HBCUs, and I said I'll give Trump credit for that. However, something I always say, you said it too. The majority of blacks will never go to HBCU, but I look at that as our fault, because if this school is essentially designed for you, you should go and stop going to PWIs as much as we do. Because, a lot of these PWIs only recruit us for our talent on basketball. You got schools like University of California and stuff, they just recruiting you for your athletic prowess. But the majority of black people are never going to make the NBA, the NFL. So, that's like a 1 in 1,000,000 chance. So that's not something that we should go to HBCUs, have our own study, and have programs. I so commend all of to go to HBCUs, but I'm saying we should be filling up the deck of HBCUs. You shouldn't have other categories of people trying to go to HBCU. You actually have HBCUs now that are majority white and also bringing in immigration in the HBCUs, and that shouldn't happen. If you fill the seat up at the HBCU, they can't even come there because you gonna enroll in all the spaces.
Well, I don't agree. I do not agree with all that. Okay, I don't agree with it. Listen, the majority, as you know, the majority of blacks who go to any university, whether it's an HBCU or not, the majority are there not on a sports scholarship.
That's right.
They're not there on a sport. There's a very, very, very infinitesimally small percentage that are there on a sports scholarship. That's number one. Okay, the others are there. They're there. They're paying their way. They have either some grants, some loans. They're working part time. They're paying their way. The majority.
That's right.
Now, whether you're educated at an HBCU or a non-HBCU, the goal is for you to get that education. And okay, and not only at the traditional colleges, but also trade school colleges, trade school type
I,
HBCUs.
I think we need that.
All of that is important. All of it. Now, the fact that you have whites and others attending HBCUs, well, there are reasons for that. You know, if you're talking about Georgetown, if you're talking about Morehouse, if you're talking about some of these HBCUs, some of them are in areas that are gentrifying.
That's right.
So if you're Asian and you live in that area where Georgetown is, you're going to attend Georgetown probably. Okay, so we have to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is getting an education, getting a knowledge of trade skills. That's the bigger picture. Regardless of whether you get it at Stanford or at a junior college or at an HBCU, regardless. If white folks want to go to an HBCU, so what? If Asians want to, so what? Okay, okay, that's almost, not quite, but almost like saying, you know, if we go back, turn the clock back 60 years ago, that's almost like saying we don't want black folks going to this college. Okay, so it doesn't sound right for black folks to say we really don't want white people and other people coming to HBCUs. That doesn't sound right. The fact that some of these people are going to HBCUs also attests to the fact that these HBCUs have good programs, that they're successful in doing what they're doing. And they have a combination of black and other professors. Okay, so we've got to look at this in an intelligent way and not in an emotional way of I'm going to get you back. We can't look at it that way. Okay.
Yeah. Now I will say this, not about that subject. I was more so saying in a context of that's I like the HBC program, but I also would go back and to say also everybody is not meant to go to college either. So you need trade schools, plumbing, HVAC, truck driving courses, whatever the fact you could use these courses and we could educate ourselves on these type of courses, So that's how I look at a lot of things, because college is one thing, but you also got trades, construction, bricklaying, pipelaying, programs that we used to have, I got friends that are in their 50s and 60s, and they'll tell me that, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, as soon as you leave high school, you can have a job. So if you don't want to go to college, you can have a job right there lined up for you, and you can make a trade career or whatever out of that job. You doctors, you can go to if you want to be a doctor, lawyer, etc. You do that, but we also got to have plumbing, cleaning, HVAC, and all of this. A list of programs and stuff that we get in. I don't think sometimes we corner the market as much as we can on things. for ourselves, and I think we could do that better if we got the knowledge and education. That's why I like you and I like your program and your 21-point agenda. It all that talks about economics, incentives, reparations, police reform, everything in your 21-point agenda. You cover it, and so that's also is in the program. So you go ahead and carry on what I was just saying right there.
Well. That's good, Bernard. That's very, very good. But let's just we have to focus on the main agenda. That is what we must focus on. We don't have time to nitpick certain things. We don't have time to do that. Right now, there's a spirit and an atmosphere in this country, and that atmosphere is pointing towards America and the world recognizing how America was formed. Okay, recognizing the racism that America was built upon and is still being maintained in part upon. So we have to focus on that. We have to really push it across the finish line based upon that. We don't have time for any nitpicking. So, but anyway, I got a few more minutes, Bernard. So I don't know if you have any additional questions you want to ask.
Well, yes. I just want to thank you for coming on this morning, and like I always say, every time we get up, we have a good conversation. Just need to shout out you. The It's a lot of wonderful content creators. You, Vicky Dillard, Shirley Husa, Philip Scott. That's African Diaspora News Channel. There's so many other people I could name, but I mean, like I said, always when I talk to you, and I contact you quite frequently and send your articles. Just trying to keep the knowledge base going with certain things. So when we keep the knowledge base going, really reach the people. With your contact information, PayPal information, you can give it to the audience because I want to make sure people know how to meet with you. This really about me. This is more so about you because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. So,
Yeah, well, once again, Bernard, thank you for the invite to your program. But you can reach Afro Synergy News. We're out there in Facebook. We're also on YouTube. We're on Twitter also. So you can reach us at all of those locations. And hey, we're open to your comments out there on the live programs. All the programs are live now. So you can always put your comments into the chat. And most comments, I actually see them. I actually read most comments, and sometimes, very often, I will respond back to you. So that's it in a nutshell. Once again, Bernard, thank you for the invite to your program.
you too. You make sure you have a good day, brother. Keep on posting the good information, and like I said, I'm gonna keep it my way. I mean, this is my tip saying no reparation, no vote, or you make the biggest demand like Sonny Johnson and get to the table. But as far as UT West, keep on pushing, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, you take care, my brother.
You too, brother.